Good morning. It's bright and early, 6:30 on a Sunday, and it's brew day at Wheatlow Brewery. And today you're going to brew a version of Timolthy Taylor Landlord, one of the best beers in Britain. Every homebrewer has probably made a Landlord over the years, and it always goes down well. And I keep tweaking the recipe because the last version I did just wasn't quite hoppy enough. Landlord is quite a hoppy beer, 43 units of bitterness, so I'm up in the hop action again. But for now we're going to get started, mash in, and the malt for this recipe is 100% Golden Promise, Simpsons Golden Promise malt. It's a heritage malt from the 60s. It almost disappeared. It was largely a distilling malt, and Landlord more or less rescued this malt from extinction back in the day, and now it just gives a lovely base to this beer, which is really a hop forward beer, but the malt is important for creating that basis for the hops to sit on. So it's really easy. You don't even have to weigh it out. It's just a whole sack, 25 kilos of Golden Promise. So let's make a start and mash in. Can't just tip it all in. You've got to mix it up. Otherwise you get dry pockets that look, we call them dough balls. And the hydration of the malt is important to activate the conversion of the sugars. So having dry pockets means you'll get a lower conversion from your mash. So stirring and mixing and eliminating dough balls is quite important. Okay, that's mashed in. I've got the water salts to add. Now water in Yorkshire is soft. If you've been up there, you'll know the rivers run slightly brown from the sort of peat and things like that, acidity, which gets rid of your carbonates and things like that. But groundwater as well is very naturally soft in Yorkshire. So that, of course, affects what beers traditionally you could make before brewers could alter water and remove minerals. So a lot of Yorkshire bitters are pale, they're creamy head, easy drinking, not normally very spiky hops, although Landlord is really hoppy, but that's because you chuck a lot of hops in. So normally high sulfate levels from gypsum make the hops bite a bit more, but this water profile is largely made up with our reverse osmosis water with Epsom salts, some table salt, sodium chloride. So we'll get the water salts in now, and then we'll check the pH. I expect we'll still have to add some acid. I think it was about 40 ml last time, so we'll crack on with that now. 2 additions of minerals, 1 and 2. 1 goes in right now, 2 goes in when we do the boil. Mix that in. Do a bit of Vorlauf, which is a posh brewing word for recirculating the wort through the mash. Usually you do it at the end to effectively filter the mash. I always do a bit at the beginning as well to help mix in the water salts and get the wort moving through the malt to get an even pH reading. So we just want the pump on low because otherwise it will suck all the mash down and it'll just stick, block. Temperature wise, we're at 66 now, which is about right, I think. I'll check that in a minute. Usually it'll cool down when we first start circulating, so I'll put the heater on thermostat to keep it at 66. pH time. Why are we obsessed with pH then, as brewers? Well, there's probably whole books about that, and I couldn't claim to be a major scientist on the job, but the pH of the mash needs to be within a certain range of about 5.2 to 5.4, so a little bit acidic. Some of it naturally, so water goes in at 7 degrees, at 7 pH, roughly, and the natural things in the malt reduce the pH somewhat anyway. So my pH normally comes out at about 5.6. And then by reducing it, you help with things like the clarity of the beer later, you help with the extraction of the sugars. Being at the optimum pH helps the enzymes work better in the mash. Things like head retention can be affected by it. So it's really important, and so we check it every time and we alter it accordingly. That says 5. You can see the temperature's still going up as the probe adjusts to it. So pH has to be read for accuracy at 20 degrees. So we need to cool this down to get the proper reading. And that's why it's useful having an ice machine in your bar. It's not for drinks, obviously, it's for brewing. And we'll keep taking pH readings. 1, to check it's all in order. 2, to check that the last reading wasn't some kind of freak from, I don't know, some pocket of minerals in the malt or something like that. Just taking 1 reading isn't enough of a sample, so now temperature's starting to come down, and it's currently reading 5.2. Yeah, brewed Landlord many times over the years. It's a great beer. My neighbours that pop in for a pint love it, particularly Bridget, who can outdrink all of us on it. So it should be pale, it should have a creamy head, and it should be really aromatic for the hops, and it should be also quite bitey bitter. Refreshing, easy drinking, 4.3. A really nice beer on cask. It's so much better on cask because it's smooth, you can drink it quickly. If you drink it in a bottle, it's more carbonated. And sometimes you just need that sessionability of a frothing, creamy pint of handcrafted ale, don't you? 5.3, 31 degrees. So here in the cold room are the hops. And we need lots of them. Lots and lots and lots of hops. Recently, I saw an episode from the Craft Beer channel where they visited Landlord, and they went into the brewery and they'd got dustbin after dustbin after dustbin after dustbin of whole leaf hops ready to chuck in. So I took that to mean, in my homebrewer guessy kind of a way, that a lot of those hops are going at the end of the boil or even the whirlpool to add to that aromatic thing. And also what came out of that video is that a lot of the hops they use are called Savinjski Goldings. Whole leaf hops they use, I did want to use whole leaf hops, but unfortunately I could only get pellets in that particular variety. So it's the next best thing, it's the right variety. Savinjski Goldings is an old hop, a noble hop. It's a descendant of Fuggles, and it was taken, Fuggles, or a descendant thereof, was taken to Slovenia in the early 1800s, and it was developed there. It's a relatively low alpha acid, 3.7 I think this one is, and you would expect to get aromas of lemon or even lemongrass, possibly some aromas of tea or green tea, and to go with the lemoniness. But from, as with other noble hops, you would expect this to be a little bit grassy, a little bit woody, and in this particular case it's quite floral, as in a sort of meadowy kind of floral smell. So it's a nice, delicate hop that we can chuck in a big quantity. We're going to use, I think, 800 grams in the whirlpool, and the whirlpool temperature is important. So let's talk about the 4 stages of hopping a beer that we can use as brewers, and there are more, but the 4 main ones now are the first hops you put in that we normally call the 60-minute hops, i.e. 60 minutes from the end of the boil. These are the hops that are going to give you the bitterness. So in this case we're using East Kent Goldings and Fuggles for that. In the last 10 minutes of the boil, these are the hops where you extract some bitterness, but because they're only in for 10 minutes, not as much, and you're getting aromas, and the volatile oils, if you like, haven't got a chance to leave the beer as much, so they're contained within it, and you're getting more of the floral stuff, the things associated with those volatile oils. So in this case we're using Celeia and Styrian Goldings in the last 10 minutes, and then we can then come on to whirlpool hops. So you turn the heat off when the boil's finished, and then cool the, some people will put hops in at flame out, as it's called, so at just under 100 degrees. Then you can also cool it to whatever temperature you want. A lot of beers now are whirlpool hopped at 80 degrees, and that's seen as a kind of a nice middle ground where you extract virtually no bitterness and plenty of aromas, and the temperature is low enough to keep them within the beer. I did that last time at 80 degrees for this recipe, and I thought that the bitterness and the hoppiness, if you like, in the bittering sense, was not up to the Landlord level. So what I'm going to do this time is whirlpool these Savinjski Goldings at 90 degrees for about 20 minutes. Also let the beer stand probably for another 20 minutes with the hops still in it, and this is to just let the beer settle before we transfer it to the fermenter. It'll be exciting to see if what we learnt from the Craft Beer Channel TV programme, where we saw all those Savinjski Goldings in buckets going into the beer, and it wasn't clear whether they were going in for the last 10 minutes or the whirlpool. We've taken a guess. We hope it's right, but much will depend on what the finished beer tastes like and whether it's similar to the real thing. And I did mention there was 4 stages of hopping. So the 4th one would be a dry hop, and we call it a dry hop, but what it really means is that we're putting hops into the beer cold, or at least not hot. So what that often means now in a brewery is that we put hops inside the fermenter after fermentation at about 14 degrees, although you can vary that, and leave them in for 2 or 3 days, and then rack the beer off or what have you into barrels and leave the hops behind. The old-fashioned way that was quite common, remember hops have preservative qualities, would be to put a few leaves inside the cask, and that would help keep the cask fresh for longer as well. Actually, we're not dry hopping this beer at all, but for the sake of completion of my little hop story, I've included the dry hop description as well for you, but we're not going to use them in this Landlord. So let's measure out these hops and get this brewing show on the road. We're at flame out now. We've already added in the boil the Goldings, some Fuggles, some Styrian Goldings, and in the last 10 minutes, 100 grams of Celeia. And now we've got a massive whirlpool addition, which is the Savinjski Goldings. So while these hops are steeping, I just wanted to say, if you don't think there's too much bull on this channel, then like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. This is how we transfer the beer to the fermenter. We've always pour it from a height rather than from the bottom. This is to get a bit of aeration into the beer, which helps with the yeast health. So the Landlord's done. Almost 140 litres, I think. So we had good efficiency today. Right, so we're all about ready to seal up, except for two things. We need the yeast, and I'm just going to check the gravity one more time in case. So in this case, the yeast we used was WLP 002. Normally we'd use WLP 037, the Yorkshire Square yeast, but in this case we used the former because we're able to make a starter solely from the dregs of a packet that we'd used for a previous batch of Tribune. So I felt very frugal doing it this way, and it's still a good yeast to use for this beer. So there it is, all tucked up, ready to ferment. Fermentation went well. After about a week, we cooled the beer down, put it into casks, put it in the cellar, and the beer's called Land for the Lord, and it pours with a creamy Yorkshire head through the hand pull coming from the cask in the cellar behind there, and you can see how delicious that creamy frothing head looks as it eases its way down the glass in this shot. Now, the colour of this beer is a sort of golden strawy colour. All the colours coming from the Golden Promise malt, and the head here, even after a few minutes, still holding its own. Inside, in a slightly different light, perhaps looks a bit paler, but it's definitely the same pint. And that creamy head hugs the side of the glass as the beer goes down. And the lacing that you see there goes all the way to the bottom of the glass. Really easy drinking and smooth. So let's have a taste now and see what we think. Let's try this Land for the Lord and see what it's like. I've got a bottle of real stuff as well. So, oops. First of all, colour-wise, I mean, theirs is absolutely pin bright. Ours is pretty clear, but it isn't. It isn't absolute. I would say it's clear, but it's when you compare to that, that's just like gold, and that's because they probably use a centrifuge or something like that at the brewery. So I'm happy with that. I think it will probably go a little bit clearer another day in the cask. So, how's the smell? Sort of honey smell. Not getting a lot of citrusy hops really. Actually quite similar. Biscuity, toasty, and honey. I was expecting to get a bit more citrusy stuff from the real thing, but actually doesn't seem to be there. So let's go in for mouthfeel. The body on it's probably medium light, and the creamy head gives an absolutely wonderful texture in your mouth. Smooth, coats the inside of your mouth, and then releases gently all the subtle flavours in the beer. The bottled version, the carbonation makes it a slightly different feel in your mouth. But trying to sort of exclude that, it's very similar. So, taste-wise, It's smooth, and you get that bitterness that you'd expect after you've swallowed, kind of lingering bitterness that I can still feel it in my mouth now. Now with the real thing, a bit more sharpness at the beginning, at the front of your tongue, but maybe that's the carbonation. They're actually more similar than I thought. They are quite similar. Now I was thinking, to be honest, I've had a couple of these last day or two, and I thought that actually it's not quite Landlord. It's not coming across as citrusy enough or hoppy enough. So I'm a bit surprised that it is reasonably similar. A little bit more, perhaps, hoppiness to this. But I have discovered that I have made a mistake on this beer. And I was double checking the water profile in order to just put the numbers in the video earlier. And I realised two things. One, when I actually brewed it, because it's a rebrew that we've done many times, I've forgotten to notice that the last time I brewed it, I used our tap water here and then added salts to try and get an approximation of that water profile. And I'd left that in the software, and our tap water's hard, so it didn't need to then add any gypsum and things like that. Now, this time we brewed it with reverse osmosis water, but forgotten to enter that that's the base water we're using in the software. Therefore, the additions have not been correct, which means we didn't put any gypsum in. So I'm surprised we can taste any hops at all, really, because it's gypsum or sulfates that make the hops shine, if you like. And a second possible mistake is my water profile actually right? At the moment, we're using a water profile that's got 2-to-1 chlorides to sulfates. And a quick search on the internet, and most people say you should do 2-to-1 the other way around. In other words, have more sulfates than chlorides 2-to-1. And that would make the hops sing a bit more. However, now that I've tasted them, and they're so remarkably similar, which has surprised me, I think I might be onto something. Conventional wisdom says 2-to-1 sulfates to chloride for a beer, but Keighley, where it's made, I think it's Keighley, isn't it, in Yorkshire, is a soft water area. They may be adding gypsum to the water to kind of Burtonise it a bit, but maybe if we've just got our water right in terms of the earlier thing I said about the tap water versus reverse osmosis water calculation, then this would probably be even closer. So I think what's been a really good move is adding the Savinjski Goldings in huge numbers in the whirlpool and upping it to 90 degrees this time, whereas I did it at 80 last time, has definitely been a good move. And this is going to be not long in the glass. Another thing that struck me about doing a tasting of this beer today is that I've been talking in the video about how Landlord's a really hoppy beer, hops, 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 and it does have a lot of hops in it. But in the tasting earlier, the first thing that we said we could smell was honey, most likely from the malt. I'm also getting a bit of orangey effect, which is most likely from the yeast. In this case, WLP002 does sometimes give some orangey bits. And it struck me that this is a beer that's actually balanced. The malt character is really important in this beer, as the subtle, noble hops, if you like, are just creating the perfect balance in this beer. And often when we think a beer's good, we often talk about balance. And this is obviously a great beer. In fact, you could argue it's the greatest cask beer in Britain. It's won the CAMRA Champion beer of Great Britain 4 times, which is more than any other beer. So it's a very highly regarded beer. It's another beer like Tribune in our other recent video, where it's got something that appeals to malt lovers, something that appeals to hop lovers in it. So it's a beer that's very popular and liked by a lot of people. And one other thing that has struck me again is just how important or good it is to serve this from a cask through a hand pull, and with a northern beer like this, of course, crucially through a sparkler as well. And that's why the head's lacing all the way down the glass. So delicious beer, enjoyed the tasting, really pleased about how similar it is to the bottled beer. So I think we can say that's a really positive result. And as usual with home brewing, we will make a few tweaks to it next time we brew it. So the Golden Promise malt is obviously really important. It's not simple beer, even though it's one malt. The complexities and the layers of subtle flavours that come from the malt and the yeast and the hops, of course, are many faceted, and that's what keeps it interesting and keeps us going back for more. So yeah, so next time I brew this, I will correct that water problem, but I think I will stick with 2-to-1 chlorides to sulfates. Let me know in the comments what you think the ideal water profile for Landlord should be. And I'm sure many of you have brewed. If you're a brewer, you've brewed Landlord. Let us know how close you've managed to get it over the years. And so that's about the end of the video for this week. But please do like and subscribe, leave us a comment. It just remains for me to drink this frothing ale.